Everyone remembers a kitchen like this: a formica table, a radio murmuring the news, a clock ticking far louder than it does today. An adult leans in, voice calm and certain, offering advice that feels as solid as the walls themselves. No doubt, no discussion, this was simply how children were raised. Looking back now, some of that guidance sounds surprising, even unbelievable, yet at the time it was everyday wisdom shared without question. Most people don't even realize how normal it once was. And that certainty shaped childhoods in ways we're only just beginning to understand today, together quietly. When the war years finally loosened their grip, Britain settled into a quieter rhythm. Ration books were tucked away, streets filled with familiar faces, and families leaned heavily on one another. Parenting advice didn't come from specialists or screens. It came from next door, from a favorite aunt, from glossy magazines passed between friends. If something worked once, it was repeated again and again. There was comfort in that certainty. Few people stopped to question it. Advice was trusted because it had survived hard times, and survival itself felt like proof enough. Mothers compared notes at the school gate, fathers nodded along to what their own parents had done, and that was that. Childhood followed a shared script, remarkably similar from one household to the next. Today, the contrast couldn't be clearer. We search, compare, and weigh options endlessly. Guidance comes wrapped in studies, charts, and opinions that often disagree. Back then, certainty ruled. Now, choice does. Neither is perfect. But understanding that difference helps explain why so much well-meant advice from the past sounds so startling to modern ears, and why it once felt so reassuring, especially for families navigating uncertainty with little time, energy, or alternatives available then. There were rules that hovered over childhood like an invisible timetable. School mornings began early, shoes polished, packed lunches wrapped neatly, expectations already set. Children were taught to be ready, to cope, to get on with things without complaint. If something felt difficult, the answer was often simple: you'd manage, and most did. These routines were meant kindly. They promised structure in a world still finding its feet. Independence was praised, emotions were kept tidy, and fussing was gently discouraged. The message was clear even when it wasn't spoken aloud. Strength came from carrying on. Looking back, you can see what this created. A generation skilled at adapting, at turning up on time, at quietly pushing through. Yet, it also meant feelings were often folded away, unexamined, left for later. Today, we talk things through, name worries, slow the pace. Back then, resilience mattered most, and silence was sometimes mistaken for strength. Shaping childhood memories that still echo softly now in kitchens, classrooms, and playgrounds across Britain for years afterward. Advice rarely arrived printed and polished. It drifted across garden fences and down terrace streets, carried by neighbors who knew every child by name. Older children kept an eye on younger ones, passing along unspoken rules about where to go, when to come home, how to behave. Parents trusted that web of watchful familiarity. It felt normal. This shared wisdom came from experience, not instruction. If someone noticed a problem, word traveled quickly and quietly. Guidance was practical, rooted in what had worked before. We trusted things then that would cause panic now, simply because the local world felt smaller, steadier, and known. Today, childhood is carefully managed, supervised, scheduled. Back then, trust did much of the work. That sense of communal confidence shaped how advice was given and received, and it explains why so much of it sounds astonishing now. It belonged to a time when the street itself felt like an extension of home, holding children gently until they were grown, and shaping memories that linger even today. Parents were often encouraged to worry less. A quiet child was fine. A worried mood would pass. Upsets were seen as phases, best met with patience rather than attention. The belief was simple: childhood had a way of smoothing itself out if adults didn't interfere too much. This wasn't indifference. It grew from lives shaped by scarcity, responsibility, and getting through each day. Many parents had learned early that dwelling on feelings didn't change circumstances. Love showed itself instead through provision, routine, and reliability. Today, we listen more closely, ask questions, and look for meaning in every change of mood. Back then, reassurance came through normality. You were expected to settle, adapt, and carry on alongside everyone else. It sounds startling now, yet for many families it felt caring, even protective. Love was present, simply expressed differently, shaped by the times rather than by a lack of concern, and carried quietly through generations who passed these ideas along without question. It's tempting to smile or shake our heads at some of this now. The advice sounds blunt, the confidence misplaced, the certainty almost unreal, yet it mattered. It raised children who learned to adapt, to endure, to find their feet without constant reassurance. Many carried those lessons into working lives, family lives, whole communities. That doesn't mean everything was right. Silence sometimes hid worry. Strength sometimes came at a cost. But judging the past by today's standards misses something important. These choices were shaped by experience, by recovery after hardship, by a desire to keep life steady and manageable. When we look back with kindness, we see both warmth and limitation sitting side by side. We see parents doing their best with what they knew, just as people do now. Understanding that shared humanity helps us remember the past as deeply human and shaped by the times that surrounded them. Today, the language has changed. Where once we heard "that's life," we now hear "let's talk about it." Certainty has softened into conversation, and emotional awareness sits alongside routine. We haven't abandoned the past, we've added to it. The resilience learned then meets the openness encouraged now. Progress doesn't erase what came before, it builds on it. And perhaps the real question is this: when you look back at the advice you were given, what did you keep? What did you quietly let go? And what did you pass on anyway?